Hey guys, Russ Tyndall here with Blue Line CNC. A while back I did a product review. I don't often do product reviews, but I did do a product review on these Clampzilla four-way panel clamps by Woodpeckers, and it came in with some mixed reviews. Some of you had a lot of comments saying that they look cumbersome to use and things of that sort. And in all honesty, to be truthful with you, when I posted that video, I had zero experience in using these panel clamps. I literally went into it feet to the fire, so to speak, and started filming the video with no experience in using the clamp. So I may have looked a little cumbersome. I've had, I don't know what now, about 6-8 months of using them. And I've kind of developed a little bit of a knack, and I've come to know how to use them much better. So in all fairness to Woodpeckers, I felt that I wanted to do a product update, so to speak, and give you a second look. I've learned a few tricks here and there with these panel clamps. These are long. They're, I don't know, 37, 38 inches long, and they probably weigh between 5 and 10 pounds a piece, I'm guessing. So all in all, there's 40 pounds of clamps sitting here. So you kind of got to know how to gingerly move them around to achieve your goals of what you're trying to do. The panels that I glue up are 16 inches in height by approximately 28 and a half inches in length. Now, these panels aren't the final dimension yet. They're about 16 inches. And that's the dimensions of what I glue up in here all the time. So I've found that I'm able to keep these pins in place. And I will tell you from firsthand experience in using these clamps that the pins are the hardest part in dealing with them. They're somewhat frustrating in getting out at times. But I found that a little hammer, give it a little knock, and the pins will come out for you nice and easy. But nevertheless, that's probably the most frustrating part in using the Clampzilla clamps. So you'll notice that I have these F-style clamps by Jorgensen's on the edges, and that's just where the boards actually meet, and they aid a great deal in making sure those ends stay together. And I will link them if you don't have these F clamps and you want them. I'll link them in the video description below. I would strongly suggest them when using the Clampzillas. They just kind of help keep everything in line. But I wanted to show you an assembled panel and removal before we start on inserting a new panel. So the Jorgensen's, they simply twist off. Now when you're undoing the clamps and taking them off your stock, just go ahead and give them all evenly a couple turns, and give yourself, about 1/4 to a 1/2 inch space between this rear block and your wood. And what I like to do is just handle them one at a time. I find that's the easiest method, excuse me. Just grab your panel and then slide off one clamp to one side. I stay with the same side, and I just slide off that second clamp. And then over here, I'll slide off that clamp. And this is the hardest part because you're kind of teetering on one clamp here. But you got to get it off your stock on that side. So once you've got your stock out and your clamps off, then you can go ahead and clean up any glue residue that might be left under the clamp on your wood, and you can sand that off. I find like the little razor scraper works great in scraping that Titebond 2 off. So let me get this out of the way, and then we'll go with how to load a series of boards and glue them up into your panel clamps. Okay, so we've got our panel clear and we've got our clamps roughly in the position that we want them. We've we've spread them apart to accept our next panel that we're going to glue up. And I have 4 pieces of oak that I want to edge glue. And what I did off camera is I took some oak and I ran, I think they're about 4-inch strips. Or cut them down to approximately 4 inches in width. So we're dealing with something approximately 16 inches in height that we're going to be putting in here. And of course we want to start with the first one. We don't need to put any glue on that. We just need to get it situated here in the clamps, and then we'll glue up boards number 2, 3, and 4, and I'll show you how we do that and how we put it in here and how we integrate those F-style clamps. So let's take this first board, and this is probably the most cumbersome or awkward part that many of you may have seen. The clamps move around a little bit, but it's easy to put them back into line with one another. So what I like to do is just go ahead and insert them, and you can see they do move around a little bit until you can get them all in. But it's mostly this first clamp. And then once you get this first board in, they do go a lot easier from there. So all we need to do is kind of space these clamps out approximately where we want them. Get them perpendicular to the board as best as we can. Again, making sure that our spacing is where we want it. This one needs to come over a little bit. And looks pretty good. Now, I don't think there's a perfect solution out there when it comes to gluing up boards for a panel clamp or any method. I think every method is going to have its pros and its cons. As does this system. This is not the end-all get-all to gluing up boards to make panels. There is often other ways you can do it, and if you have a workflow that works best for you, go for it. I'm not telling you to buy this product. I'm not endorsed by Woodpeckers. I should have said that in the beginning. I paid for these clamps with my own money. So the next thing we're going to do is we want to glue up boards 2, 3, and 4. And I just get them over here so I can work with all of them at the same time. Then I'll use my glue bot to spread some tight bond 2. I love this glue bot. I'll go ahead and link it in the in the video description below in case you want to get one. They're great for spreading glue. I think they work better than the manufacturer's bottle. That's just me though. And you can get different tip sizes for it depending on your needs. And let's get this third one, or this fourth one here. Just get a good bead of glue on the edge. And then close that off with a little silicone tip. And I also use a little glue spreader to spread the glue on the edges of my boards. I find that works really good in getting even distribution, and I'll link that as well. And if you find yourself getting a little extra, just have a paper towel standing by to receive the runoff, so to speak, where you can just dab your applicator. Okay, looks pretty good. Now I'm going to set, I've got boards 2, 3, and 4 ready to go. I'm going to set 3 and 4 aside for a second and work on getting number 2 in there. Goes a lot easier than you may think. Just hold down board number 1 in the clamp, and pull number 2 through. Just butt it up next to where where number 1 was. Then we take number 3, do the same thing. Now when I prepared these boards, I just used a table saw, my table saw, to get the edges perfect with one another. I've found that that is working pretty good for me. Before I found out my table saw does just as good a job, I was using a jointer, a portable jointer. If you have one of those work good, as do router tables. There's a number of ways that you can prepare your wood to get ready to do a panel, be part of or make a panel. So now I've got all 4 boards in there. There's glue on the edges that it needs to be. I'm going to start with the inside clamps, and I'm just going to crank them down until they start to make contact with the wood. I'm not going to tighten them yet. Just till they start to make contact and I start to see a little bit of squeeze out. Then I'll hold there and I'll go to the edges just until they make contact. And I'll stop where they make contact. I won't tighten the edges yet. And then this is where I use my F-clamps. And I will just tighten the edges down. And let's get this side over here. So once you've got the F-clamps on the edges, then you can go ahead and finish tightening up these 2 outer side Clampzillas. And then I go back to the center and I give it a little more pressure. And the objective is not to really crank down on these things. You don't want to do that. You want to give it just enough pressure to where you know you're getting a good bite laterally and whatever direction would be the opposite of that way. We want it that way because that's how these panel clamps work. They work up and down and then side to side. There's pressure 2 ways to bring these boards in alignment with one another. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and just make sure there's just enough pressure on there. And then what we'll do is wait for that glue to somewhat dry. I like to give it about 10-15 minutes. And then I'll come through with a putty knife and I'll scrape it off and get as much of it off as I can. And then when I remove the clamps, then I'll be able to take a razor knife and or razor blade and just get the rest of it on there, or a random orbital sander will take that off. There's a number of methods you can use. So, hey guys, if you like my content, please subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Don't forget to like this video if you like the content, and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content. And if you want to take a look at the original Clampzilla video that I made, that is this video's predecessor, I'll put a card in the upper right-hand corner of the screen right about now. So with that, until the next video, y'all take care.